The SCP Foundation stares down the impossible every single day, entities that break physics, devour dimensions, and rewrite reality itself, but some anomalies are so dangerous that even the Foundation is genuinely terrified of them. So today, I'm breaking down every SCP that frightens the Foundation itself, starting with the one that punishes you for blinking, SCP-173, the Sculpture. Here's the thing about the SCP Foundation, they've got protocols for everything: interdimensional monsters, reality-bending gods, creatures that eat concepts for breakfast. But SCP-173 turns trained military personnel into paranoid toddlers playing the world's most lethal staring contest. SCP-173 is a concrete and rebar sculpture that looks like something a disturbed art student would submit as a final project and refuse to explain. It cannot move while you're looking at it. Simple, right? Turns out, no. The instant you break line of sight, even for a fraction of a second, this thing closes the distance and snaps your neck. No warning, no sound. Nobody knows exactly how fast it moves because nobody who's lost eye contact has survived long enough to report back, which is, you know, not ideal. Containment requires a minimum of 3 personnel entering its chamber at once. At least 2 must maintain direct eye contact at all times, and they have to notify each other before they blink. Grown adults announcing blinking like it's some nightmare kindergarten game, because if both blink at the same time, they're dead. But if you think a statue that kills you for blinking is bad, wait until you meet the thing that kills you for looking at it. SCP-096, the Shy Guy. SCP-173 punishes you for looking away. SCP-096 punishes you for looking at all. This thing stands 2.38 meters tall with arms stretching 1.5 meters long, albino skin, and a jaw that can open 4 times wider than any human mouth should. It looks like something that's been starving for centuries, and it has one rule: do not see its face. If you view SCP-096's face through any medium, whether that's direct eye contact, a photograph, or even a single frame of security footage, the creature enters a distress phase. It screams and cries for 1 to 2 minutes. Sounds almost pitiful. Then it stops crying and starts running. Pursuit speeds start around 35 kilometers per hour, but scale with distance. The farther away you are, the faster it moves. Nothing stops it. Not walls, not reinforced steel, not entire continents. Upon reaching you, SCP-096 kills you and leaves 0 traces. No body, no blood, you just stop existing. The Foundation's containment strategy is genuinely unnerving. No cameras, no video surveillance of any kind. They monitor it exclusively through pressure sensors and laser detectors, because even a single frame could trigger a breach. The containment plan isn't keep it locked up, it's make sure nobody ever sees what it looks like. But if 096 is a nightmare you can technically avoid by never looking, the next entry is a nightmare that actively comes looking for you, SCP-076, Able. Inside a Foundation containment facility sits a 3-meter cube of black stone, roughly 10,000 years old, covered in engravings that match 0 known civilizations. And inside that cube, technically dead, lies a lean Semitic male standing 1.96 meters tall, covered head to toe in tattoos of arcane demonic iconography. He looks like the final boss of a civilization that never existed. Here's the problem: he doesn't stay dead. Periodically, SCP-0762 reanimates, all vital signs returning at once, and immediately enters a trance-like state with one singular goal: find the nearest human and kill them. Not talk, not negotiate. Kill. And he's extraordinarily good at it. Superhuman strength, superhuman speed, near total pain tolerance, and the ability to pull weapons out of thin air through what the Foundation describes as dimensional rifts. Claymores, maces with whirling spikes, explosives, and for some reason enormous scissors. I don't know what to tell you. When you finally manage to kill him, his body turns to dust, except he just reconstitutes inside the cube. Resurrection takes anywhere from 6 hours to 25 years, and nobody knows what determines the timer. They once detonated a nuclear warhead just to stop him. He came back, but here's where it gets tragic. SCP-0762 is believed to be the biblical Abel, cursed to an eternity of violent resurrection, forever linked to his brother Cain, who exists as SCP-073. 2 brothers from the oldest story ever told, trapped in an endless cycle, one who can't die and one who can't stop wandering. But at least Abel can technically be killed, even if it doesn't stick. The next entry doesn't even give you that luxury. SCP-682, hard to destroy reptile. The Foundation's containment procedures for SCP SCP-682 are the most unintentionally honest document they've ever written. The first line says the entity must be destroyed as soon as possible. The very next line says no available means can destroy it. They wrote, "Kill this thing immediately," and we can't kill this thing in the same paragraph and just moved on, which is, not ideal. SCP-682 is a large, vaguely reptile-like creature of unknown origin that hates everything alive and has told the Foundation as much during interviews. This isn't speculation. It sat down, opened its mouth, and expressed explicit contempt for all living organisms. It also held a full conversation with SCP-079, an artificial intelligence, meaning it's not just angry, it's intelligent and social when it wants to be. Here's where containment gets darkly funny. The Foundation keeps 682 submerged in hydrochloric acid inside a steel-lined chamber. Sounds brutal, right? Except the creature has specialized filtering gills that extract usable energy from any substance it touches, including the acid. They built it a bath that feeds it. The entity has been documented moving and speaking with 87% of its body destroyed, which means you can dissolve nearly the entire animal and it will look at you and tell you it's going to kill you. But the real horror is the adaptation. Every termination attempt the Foundation has tried, 682 develops immunity to. Every new weapon becomes a lesson the creature learns from, and it never forgets. You don't fight 682, you just teach it what doesn't work anymore. If you think a conscious, unkillable predator that hates all life is bad, wait until you meet the thing that drags you into its own personal dimension just to watch you suffer. SCP-106, the Old Man. Everything we've covered so far has one thing in common. You can see the threat, you can understand it, and you can at least try to run. SCP-106 is where that stops being true. The Old Man appears as an elderly humanoid in a state of advanced decomposition, coated in black mucus. Every solid surface it touches corrodes on contact, rusting and cracking like the material aged 1,000 years in seconds. It can scale any wall, phase directly through solid matter like it doesn't exist. Walls, steel, reinforced containment chambers. None of it matters. 106 slips into a pocket dimension it fully controls, then exits from any connected point it chooses. And here's where it gets genuinely horrible. SCP-106 prefers prey between the ages of 10 and 25. It doesn't hunt because it's hungry. It hunts because it wants to. Victims are dragged into the pocket dimension, which reshapes itself around their deepest fears, and 106 keeps them alive for as long as possible. It will sometimes release a victim specifically so it can enjoy hunting them down again, which is, not ideal. But the real nightmare isn't the Old Man, it's the Foundation's recontainment protocol. When 106 breaches containment, they don't send in a tactical team, they send in a person. A live human lure is placed in a cell, a major long bone is deliberately broken, and their screams are broadcast through the facility to trigger 106's predatory instinct. That's not containment. That's using a human being as bait. Bones snapped on purpose by the organization supposedly protecting humanity from evil. And if you think the Foundation's moral compromises stop there, wait until you hear what they're feeding to a 900-kilometer eel at the bottom of the ocean. SCP-3000, Anantashesha. Somewhere beneath the Bay of Bengal, roughly 0.7 kilometers under the surface, there is a living thing between 600 and 900 kilometers long. That's not a typo. SCP-3000 is a massive serpentine organism resembling a giant moray eel, stretching longer than some entire countries. The Foundation maintains a 300-kilometer quarantine zone around it, patrolled by naval vessels, making sure nobody accidentally discovers the largest living nightmare on the planet. But the size isn't even the scary part. SCP-3000 is a cognito-hazardous entity. Just observing it causes severe head pain, paranoia, panic attacks, and memory loss. Your brain literally starts deleting itself the longer you look at it, which is, not ideal when your job is to study the thing. Here's where it gets truly dark. During digestion, SCP-3000 excretes a substance called Y909. When refined, it produces amnestics more effective than anything the Foundation has ever created. Zero side effects. Miracle drug, but SCP-3000 only produces Y909 after consuming human prey. So the Foundation sends D-class personnel down in submarines and feeds them to a god-sized eel to harvest memory-erasing chemicals from its digestive waste. They turned a deity into a factory and people into raw materials, and they can't stop because the entire Foundation's amnestic supply depends on it. Foundation researcher Dr. Venkat Krishnamurthy spent enough time near SCP-3000 to become convinced it was Anantashesha, the primordial serpent king from Hindu mythology. He looked at this creature and saw something eternal and incomprehensible, and then he deliberately fed himself to it. A man who understood what he was looking at and decided becoming part of it was preferable to living with that knowledge. The Foundation filed his death as a containment incident and kept harvesting. But if the ethical horror of feeding people to a god for drug production bothers you, wait until you see what's behind SCP-2317. SCP-2317, A Door to Another World. Most SCPs on this list are terrifying because of what they might do. This one is terrifying because of what it will do, and nobody can stop it. SCP-2317 is a wooden door, a basement door from a 19th century brownstone in Massachusetts. Looks completely ordinary, but step through it and you're in an entirely different reality, standing on a salt pan stretching kilometers in every direction, surrounded by 7 massive pillars. Here's the thing, those pillars aren't decorative, they're chains, and they're the only thing keeping something called the Devourer from entering our reality. 6 of the 7 chains have already broken. The 6th chain's failure alone killed approximately 2 million people in baseline reality. Not the creature escaping, just the restraint loosening. But here's where it gets genuinely hopeless. The chains were originally constructed from the bones and sinew of another Devourer, a second godlike entity that is now extinct. The Foundation has tried to replicate the material, tried to repair the chains, tried everything. Whatever civilization performed that ritual is long gone, and they took the method with them. So there's 1 chain left. Final containment failure is projected within approximately 30 years. The Foundation possesses no means to prevent it, no means to delay it, and no means to survive what comes after. This isn't a containment breach they're preparing for. It's a countdown to an apocalypse they've already accepted. The Foundation's greatest fear was never the monster in the room. It was the monster they can see coming, with a clock ticking down above its head, and absolutely nothing they can do about it. But if an unstoppable apocalypse sounds bad, wait until you hear about the thing that's already here and you can't even think about without it killing you. SCP-3125, The Escapee. Every threat we've covered so far has one thing in common. You can point at it, you can shoot at it, you can, in theory, build a box around it. SCP-3125 is none of those things. It's a living, hostile, predatory thought from the 5th dimension, and it is arguably the most terrifying entry in the entire Foundation database. Here's what it is. SCP-3125 is an enormous memetic complex, an amalgamation of ideas so sophisticated it functions as a living organism. It doesn't exist in physical space. It exists in the noosphere, the collective infrastructure of human thought, and it manifests there as a fractally complex, grasping disembodied hand with 5-fold symmetry and a pentagonal mouth at the center. Which is, not ideal. But here's where it gets terrifying. SCP-3125 isn't fully here yet. It's leaking into our reality, pushing through from outside, and the Foundation estimates that if it ever fully arrives, it would take approximately 4 hours to replace every single human thought on the planet. Not death, not destruction, the complete and permanent erasure of independent human thought. And you can't fight it because the weapon is knowledge. Any individual who learns SCP-3125's true nature gets their mind overwritten. They become a slave whose sole purpose is spreading the entity's core concepts. Humans have 0 evolutionary defense against this thing. Our brains have no antibodies, no resistance, nothing. Here's the kicker. The Foundation believes SCP-3125 is responsible for creating most memetic and anti-memetic anomalies they've ever documented. The 5thist religious movement, every single follower is an early infectee, carrying fragments of its influence like a virus they don't know they have. Entire belief systems, potentially just symptoms of an infection humanity doesn't even recognize. But if a living thought that devours consciousness sounds bad, wait until you meet the entity that rewrites reality itself just by existing. SCP-3812, A Voice Behind Me. Here's the thing about most SCPs on this list. They're monsters, or ancient gods, or living ideas that eat your brain. They were never human. SCP-3812 was. His name was Sam Howell. He was a non-anomalous African-American man who lived a completely ordinary life and died in 1996. And then shortly after his death, he was observed rising out of his grave and disappearing, which is, not ideal. What came back wasn't Sam anymore. SCP-38112 possesses an active, aggressive, anomalous influence on reality itself. It can alter events throughout time, retroactively, specifically to prevent its own containment. Let that sink in. The Foundation can't contain it because every time they try, SCP-38112 rewrites history so the attempt never happened. Most individuals historically affected by its influence likely no longer exist. Not dead, erased, timeline revised, people deleted like rough draft characters. But here's where it stops being scary and starts being genuinely sad. SCP-38112 suffers from an extremely advanced schizophrenia complex, extreme paranoia, extreme dysphoria, manic depression, auditory and visual hallucinations, complete inability to distinguish real from imagined phenomena, and these symptoms have grown progressively worse over 20 years since the Foundation first discovered it. The entity is not capable of accurately perceiving the world around it, and occasionally it alters reality to match what it thinks it sees. Read that again. A mind that cannot tell what is real from what isn't, attached to the power to make the universe conform to its delusions. There's no malice here, no grand plan, just a broken consciousness rewriting existence because it doesn't know the difference between a hallucination and Tuesday afternoon. The Foundation isn't facing an enemy, they're facing a tragedy with the power of a god, and if you think a reality warper with no awareness is terrifying, wait until you meet one that's fully aware and has chosen a single human being as its favorite toy. SCP-3999, I am at the center of everything that happens to me. Every other entity on this list is terrifying because of what it can do to the world. SCP-3999 is terrifying because of what it chose to do to one person. SCP-3999 is an omnipotent reality warping entity capable of triggering a ZK-class end-of-reality scenario, meaning it can literally unmake existence. The Foundation has zero means of containing it. None. Not a single protocol, material, or countermeasure works. But here's where it gets personal. Out of every living thing in every reality it could access, SCP-3999 became obsessively fixated on one man, Foundation researcher James Talleyrand. Not an O5 council member, not some anomalous superhuman, just a guy with a badge and a desk. And this entity spent millions of years constructing entire realities from scratch for the sole purpose of breaking Talleyrand's mind. Every creature in those realities was built to hurt him. Every person was designed to betray him. Every mechanism existed to make him suffer in ways that would make the worst entries on this list look like minor inconveniences. Millions of years of personalized, handcrafted torture from a god that could end reality, but instead chose to spend eternity tormenting one random researcher. But Talleyrand figured something out. Despite the endless constructed nightmares, he discovered that SCP-3999 needed to be bonded to another being to survive. It couldn't exist alone, so Talleyrand did the one thing an omnipotent entity couldn't predict. He killed himself, and in doing so, he destroyed SCP-3999 completely, undoing every reality it had built, every horror it had unleashed. One human defeated an omnipotent god through the willingness to die, which is, both the most heartbreaking and the most defiant thing anyone has done on this list. But if you think confronting an all-powerful torturer is the worst fate imaginable, wait until you hear what happens to everyone after they die. SCP-2718, what happens after? Here's the thing about every SCP we've covered so far. Every single one of them, no matter how terrifying, operates on the assumption that death is an escape. SCP-2718 removes that option permanently. This anomaly is classified as a Damarung class cognitohazard, a clearance level so restricted that the containment procedures don't just forbid reading the file, they forbid knowing the file exists. No personnel, regardless of rank, are allowed to expose themselves to the description. Even acknowledging it in conversation is a containment breach. The reason is simple. SCP-2718 reveals what actually happens after you die, and it's not nothing. Every human who dies remains conscious, trapped inside their own decaying body, experiencing the full sensation of decomposition. Every microbe eating through your tissue, every cell collapsing, pain that doesn't diminish but somehow intensifies, transitioning into an agony so far beyond human comprehension that the document literally cannot describe it, and it never never stops, ever. But here's where it gets worse. The knowledge itself is the weapon. Learning what happens after death doesn't just inform you, it restructures your actual experience of death, meaning ignorance was literally functionally bliss, and understanding is eternal damnation. By reading the document, you may have just condemned yourself to the very fate it describes, and according to files connected to a separate anomaly, this isn't random cosmic cruelty, there's something feeding on it. An entity deliberately inflicting this torment on every deceased human being to sustain itself on their suffering. Every person who has ever died throughout all of human history currently exists in perpetual agony, which is, you know, not ideal. But if SCP-2718 tells you what happens after death, the next entry explains why the Foundation decided death might actually be the answer. SCP-5000. Why? Every single entry on this list has one thing in common. The Foundation is the wall between humanity and the thing trying to destroy it. SCP-5000 asks a simple question. What happens when the wall decides you're the problem? On December 4th, 2020, a non-functional mechanical suit appeared in a flash of light inside Site-62C. The Foundation's own schematics identified it as an absolute exclusion harness, a suit they designed themselves. Inside was a corpse. Genetic testing confirmed the body was identical to a living Foundation employee named Pietro Wilson. That's already unsettling. But the suit had file storage, and the archives inside told a story that makes every other entry on this list feel manageable. In an alternate timeline, the SCP Foundation declared war on humanity, not against an anomaly, against people. They dispersed SCP-610 through New York and Delhi, mass infecting civilians. They deployed SCP-2639 against survivor communities, telling them they were fighting escaped monsters. They weren't. And to make sure nobody could undo it, the Foundation deliberately triggered the Yellowstone supervolcano to destroy SCP-2000, the one entity capable of resurrecting humanity at scale. Here's the thing that keeps people up at night. The leading theory connects this to SCP-2718, the revelation that an entity feeds on human suffering through death. If the Foundation discovered that every human who ever died was being tortured eternally to feed something, then killing all of humanity might have been a mercy. Starve the entity, end the suffering permanently, genocide as the most horrifying act of compassion imaginable. Pietro Wilson is alive right now. He works for the Foundation. Monastic therapy confirmed he has zero knowledge of SCP-5000, zero memories of an alternate timeline, zero awareness that a version of him died wearing a suit built to survive the apocalypse his own organization caused. The file is simply titled, Why? And after everything contained in those archives, that one word is the only question that matters. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.